What's up, guys? Good morning. Happy Sunday. How is everyone doing? What's up, Angelo? How you doing, Mary? Everyone good? Okay, so let's crack on. Let's get into it, guys. Going to be an interesting session today. A good few touch points to cover. I've made some pretty substantial moves in the markets, some tricky decisions, but I believe they are to be the right ones. So maybe not in terms of profiting, P&L, maybe not in terms of my equity curve growing, but certainly adhering to the way I'd like to perform and operate as a trader. So before we crack on, can you hear me okay? Sound okay? Is the picture okay? Let me know, and then we can tuck into it all. What's up, Morin? All right, cool. Kelechi, how you doing, man? Right, so BTC, right? Let's start with the King Corn. We are hovering in this area here. Okay, so let's do it top-down style to get a clear, holistic picture of the markets, right? And you can see instantly the levels I have marked on here. Okay. Now this is not fear factor. This is not fear mongering. It's not my intention at all here. It's just trying to be as candid and rational and unbiased with the markets as possible. Okay. So we all know about this double top structure, right? In 21 that formed. It has been a concern of mine and potential probable outcome. You know, I believe it was, now probably 4 weeks ago, that I was talking about this structure here. Okay. So this potential, right? And please take emphasis on the word potential monthly RSI divergence that's forming here. Okay. Now it's not as ferocious as this divergence here, of course, where you have the clean double divergence printing across the awesome oscillator. If you look at the monthly picture here, it is solely on the RSI, right? The AO, it's simply too tight, right, for the AO to have caught up, and this gave it a bit more room, right? So let's take it here. What are we looking at? Let's say 8-9 bars, right? Whereas here, half that. Okay, so the AO is it's a slower indicator, more reliable in a sense, but certainly slower. And because of that nature in the oscillator, there isn't enough time to print that double diverging structure where we have those clear lower highs across the AO and the RSI, whilst we also have higher highs on price. Now, we do have a potential divergence on the RSI, and despite the tightness here, you can see some semblance, right? You may have to zoom in a bit, but you can see this diminishing value as we progress through these bars on the awesome oscillator. So, that's basically the main thought process in this area. Okay, potential unconfirmed RSI divergence and potential unconfirmed monthly SFP or sweep, stop hunt, whatever you want to call it. Now, I just want this picture to settle in with you guys a bit, okay? Because really and truly, we can, we can rattle down, and we will go down into the lower time frames ever so slightly on BTC and do a bit more analysis. But really, this is the simplicity of my thought process at the moment, and this is what's influenced my decisions and actions in the markets of late. Okay, so scope down to the weekly. We can see we have another timestamp coming up, right? We got the weekly close in just under 14 hours, sorry. If we lock in the weekly SFP, that may bring more chance for the monthly SFP to occur, okay? So first off, eyes on the weekly SFP, and then we're seeing how the monthly develops in 6.5 days, okay? 3-day, we can see that we are peaking into the overextended regions past the 70s. Well, we're past the 70s, now 67s. And daily is also an interesting picture on BTC. Okay, so essentially it's an invalidated RSI divergence. Why is it invalidated? Because we've gone past the point of being flat topped. Okay, this second peak basically eclipses the first, which means that from a technical standpoint, if you're following a strict rule set on RSI divergences, that we've invalidated that divergence structure on the RSI. That being said, anyone that's dug into my trading course and seen my divergences video will know that I have 6 rules that I look at when trading and charting RSI divergences. But upon those 6 rules, I also have a margin of flexibility that I carry in my trading as well. This is probably one of those areas where that flexibility should be exercised, simply because of the context of where BTC is, okay? Taking out this high here, we know the weekly and monthly picture already, and then we also have this structure on the awesome oscillator as well, okay? So although it's not a trade that I'm actioning, and to dive into that a bit further, why am I not taking a position here? All the discourse so far, we've been speaking for 10 minutes so far. Everything that I've been saying is fairly bearish, even though a lot of the stuff I've said has been of an unconfirmed nature. Why am I not taking a position here? The reason being is because I think I've learnt as I've grown as a trader over the years that I don't want to operate at the points of potential pivot in the markets that make you look like a genius, okay? Essentially, if I went short here, and let's say, hypothetically, this was the top, then I've caught near enough the Pico top, right? And I can post that I'm short on Twitter, I can farm clout in a few months, look like a genius in hindsight, etc., etc. But despite having, and anyone that's followed my stuff or been in my group for some time will know that I've spoken about my rationale of exiting at the top up here and then scaling in heavy spot at the bottom down here. 2 moves that I've been very proud of and have served me very well, obviously, from a financial standpoint. Despite having done so, within this period here, I've grown to a degree where I don't really want to try those stabs anymore, because here in this area, yes, I did exit my portfolio at this area here, but I was also taking stabs at a potential high in this area here. And then probably in this area here, I can't quite remember, into this cluster. And I've realized that trying to time high time frame Pico tops and bottoms, unless it's glaringly obvious for multiple reasons across, high confluence across multiple time frames, then it's an ego play. And that's a stance that I'm forever trying to move away from. And I covered in the last couple of streams that at these points of potential pivot in the markets, I'd rather just let the market unfold, see what plays out, see if the trend is to continue, or we get more signs of a confirmation in terms of a top here, and then just playing into the trend, right? So that first 10-20% of the trend, I'm more than happy to miss out on, right? I don't care. I'll just sit on my hands, and I say that wholeheartedly, even looking at this monthly picture here, right? And even looking at the weekly picture here, I don't feel the urge to play into that sort of ego aspect of trading anymore, which I think is a big sort of developmental milestone in terms of my trading psychology, and that sort of side of things as well. So regardless of the play out of BTC here, I'm very happy to take that stance. And these sort of aspects of psychological maturation will segue nicely into the moves that I've made recently as well. Anyway, rant aside, we've got the weekly picture here. We've spoken about the daily oscillators and diverging structures as well. If we are to resume and carry on the uptrend in this area, two areas to the downside I have eyes on are the 100k lows, so potential sweep here, and also this daily cluster, probably more visible on the 3-day. No, not even. Okay, so it's a janky daily cluster, but a daily cluster nonetheless. Okay, if we sort of scroll through the bars and minimize them a bit, it looks slightly cleaner. This is typically how I chart anyway. I don't tend to chart like this. It's more when I'm analyzing or running on streams. But essentially what I'm looking for in terms of downside plays would be something like this, or something like this. Okay, again, would I action them? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on the signals at the time. I'd have to see probably heavy divergences in that area, and very, very strong delta signals to bolster the trade thesis, especially against the headwinds of the monthly picture, etc., etc. As I said, very happy to be hands-off, generally speaking, but in terms of potential downside targets as to where price may reverse if we start dropping, this is where my eyes are. Okay, so Ethereum, moving on. We can do top down again. Monthly, nothing of significance. Okay, if anything, into this sort of SR here, right? The 3 days, an interesting picture. So weekly, what do we have? Potential challenging point here on the weekly, just being where it is on the RSI. So it's tussling with the 50 level here, right? So this is sort of make or break on the weekly time frame, especially when it's in concert with this 3-day supply zone here. Okay, so clean 3-day pocket of interest supply, and price has moved steadily and surely into this, both with speed and with multiple wicks into the zone. So I know everyone's losing their shit over Ethereum at the moment, but don't buy into all of that, right? If the chart gives you reason to lose your shit, then lose your shit, right? If crypto Twitter is what's making you feel like that, then you probably need to rethink your approach, right? At the moment, it's weekly testing the underside of 50 level, and we're into 3-day supply. Okay. That being said, we have overcome this SR here, right? And this was the main SR that I was talking about over the sort of last few weeks, which is here, okay? But of course, now that we're into 3-day supply, it's a tricky spot here because we're sandwiched between higher time frame support and also higher time frame supply. So best case, in my opinion, is the support holds, we invalidate the supply and move onwards. But again, and I'll say this for pretty much any market we're looking at today, it all rests on BTC, right? It all rests on BTC. Of course, it goes without saying. You know, there's very, very slim odds that we fail BTC higher time frame and Ethereum carries on its own, okay? So yeah, BTC is what everything is lynching on, in my opinion. What else have we got? Daily. Semi-diverging structure into that 3-day cluster. Although there's no higher highs on price, it is still a clue about the momentum of price in this area, okay? In that, you know, the price is pretty much flat here, whilst the oscillators are putting in these diverging structures. Again, nothing to action there. I would never take a trade on this basis because it's not a technical divergence. That being said, it is still a clue and an insight into price's momentum. Going down to the 4-hour, you can see that we're just simply range bound in this area. Okay. So basic range here on the 4, and you can see it nicely on the hourly as well. In terms of potential trade setups, set an alert up here, set an alert down here. It's as simple as that, okay? Don't diddle in the middle. No reason to be taking any trades or any stabs in the middle of the range, as far as I'm concerned. Just set your alerts and operate, or think about operating if they hit. Solana, may as well, okay? So we'll cover this off last before looking at some other smaller markets. Monthly remains to be, at current, still one of the most interesting markets. I've said this over and over again over recent streams. Exact reset on the monthly. We know the power of resets, and even more so exact resets, okay? I speak about this, I've been speaking about this very often recently, been very vocal about exact resets. And goes without saying, the higher the time frame, the more validity, which piques my interest greatly on Sol, especially when coupled with this monthly SFP picture here. That being said, if you sort of delve down to the lower time frames, I've also been saying that these equal highs here have been where I've got my alerts set, and I really want to monitor the reaction at this level here. Because we have equal highs here, which means that it's even more a magnet for stop losses and subsequently liquidity in this area. But what we also have here is a pattern that I seldom speak about, but I have covered a few times in the past, which is an LSOH, which stands for local sweep of historic. What that means is that we basically swept the sweep. Okay, so this is the local sweep of a historic sweep here. It used to be one of the strongest signals in my playbook. It's still something that I pay good attention to, even though it doesn't have a section in my gatekeeping system per se. It's basically, it's even more confluence than a single sweep, essentially, okay? Because it's essentially what it's doing is it's doing as much damage as possible in this area. You know, we're not just taking out this high. You can see that we've actually done so with the divergence here in this area. So 12-hour is probably the most bearish picture for Solana here. You've got the diverging structure, just about double divergence as we take out these equal highs, dip down any shorters in this area that do something like this. You know, if you're a divergence trader or even an SFP trader, trying to be a bit cheeky with your size and stopping distance, you get fucked on this trade. And even though it plays to your direction, you've been jumped on it basically because you tried to get smarter than the markets, and it's doing as much damage as possible. That's basically the feature of these LSOHs. So yet to be seen. Again, not taking a position on Sol, simply commentating on what I'm seeing here. But yeah, Sol has to put in some good work in this area. These highs were always the main points that I had my eyes on. Again, it gives us a good sort of line in the sand, so to speak, because if we are able to invalidate this ELSO and move higher past this bearish setup or this environment that we're currently stood in, then it speaks for the strength of Sol as well, right? Should I sell my house to all in short Sol? 100%. Yep. Your families as well, right? Just sell everyone's house. Your car, all your clothes, your shoes, down to your socks, 100%. And that is financial advice, right? We're not seeing any NFAs around here. Okay, so in terms of my trading activity, sell your bodies even better. Yeah, OnlyFans it, Moran. And get graphic, right? We're not just talking about like a feet page. Like go all in. Go all in. Okay, so hype. As you all know, been religiously obsessed and dedicated to this market of late. Regretfully announcing, to a degree, shamefully announcing that I've closed my positions on the market. My perps positions, trading positions anyway, okay? And the reason being is because of the BTC picture, where we are at current on BTC, and it's also a note to the aphorism that I preach regularly, which is focus on the process, not the profits. Okay. Now, although I'm a massive advocate and proponent of that statement, it has to also be taken with a pinch of salt in some conditions, because the only technical reason for me to exit these trades is this, okay? But really, in truth, the main reason that I'm exiting these positions, is because collectively, since this month, collectively off hype, right? A 16R and a 14R, okay? So up 30R on this market, and I still have a spot bag running. These have been probably, in combination with the other positions that I've closed recently, some of my best trading to date. And I simply cannot ignore the P&L on these positions. It would seem greedy more than anything to keep them running. Sometimes I take the opposite stance, and I feel like it's the absence of greed and, in place of it, responsible to keep positions running. In this area, context given, it feels like it would be greed for me to hold on to these positions. As a result, I've decided to close them in their entirety, not even just trim anything off. I haven't trimmed anything off whilst holding, so I've done very well in terms of letting the trend run to, play out as best it can, squeezing out as much value in that regard. But I just can't ignore a cumulative 30R on this market. And yeah, off the back of that, have decided to close both the hype positions. It also seemed like I was getting euphoric about these positions as well. Okay. In my Discord, I So I spent quite a bit of time in the capital this week, had a bit of a scare on the baby front, which is all resolved now, so nothing to worry about. But basically had to take 3 to 4 days out of my life, put all work and trading on pause and drive halfway up the country to see a specialist doctor and run a bunch of tests. In doing so, I was just letting it run, right? It was basically just doing this, okay? So I wasn't checking the markets, but was obviously very pleased to see the outcome when I did so after a few days. Came back into the cord and said, I'm back. Hype is hyped in capital letters, right? And as soon as I posted that, I thought, okay, right, hallmark signs of euphoria here. And those are sort of the personal signs which, when they flare up, I want to be heavily cognizant of that. I want to practice introspection. I want to ask myself questions like, what kind of trader do I want to be in this area? Is this a red flag? And, you know, it's still pushing up here. Despite that, even if it runs to Valhalla, firstly, I still have my spot position. Secondly, I've decided that this is the best move for me in my trading journey, because from a psychological standpoint, it's how I should be operating, right? It's the mature and professional way to be trading in this area. And, you know, I've taken some great wins here. This has been some of my best trading to date. Yeah, cumulatively 30R on hype and a couple of more to add to that basket. I've been up 45R in the last few weeks. You know, why would I let those positions run further? You know, especially considering the BTC picture here. It's one of those things whereby, you know, you always, again, it comes down to the ego play, right? I would love to let these positions run. We get a full-blown alt season and, you know, I get a cumulative or singular 100R trade, right? To whack all over social media and say, you know, first 100R, you know, blah, 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 farm clout until the cows come home. But ultimately, that's not the kind of trader I want to be. And yeah, really been getting fed up with Twitter, to be honest, of late, and it just feels like a mugs game, and it is just clout farming, etc. So, and that's not conducive to the type of trader I want to be either. You know, these YouTube formats are so, you know, I'm reflecting, I'm going through everything in fine detail, and there's none of that basically going on. But anyway, that's a separate tangent. But close the hype positions. Virtual, I closed this morning at 8 o'clock when I woke up. I believe I ran through this in the last stream. I believe I did. I'll do a quick recap just in case, because I'm not too sure. Essentially, hourly and 30-minute diverging structures into this intra-demand zone here. So anyone that's familiar with the way that I trade trending markets will know that in these sort of areas here, where you have impulse and then you have range, in these areas here, I'm always looking at two things. The first thing being sweeps of the range lows, so that could be here. The second thing is taps into intra-demand, or in bearish trends, taps into intra-supply. The glaringly obvious cluster is here, impulse, cluster, impulse. If you don't know what supply and demand is or how it's charted, then please refer to my video on supply, demand and order blocks. But you can see this cluster here. Essentially what we want to see as price moves into this area, if it moves into that zone, is a divergence, a speed of price, or both. Ideally both. We had speed in small measure here as price came down, and then we had a nice diverging structure across the hourly. on the RSI and the awesome oscillator. I believe the 30-minute as well. Yeah, cleaner on the hourly. And you can just see how price just starts grinding into that zone, multiple taps, using it as a sort of support buffer before pushing up. So this is, of course, one of my 10 markets that I'm hawking at the moment, or have been stalking anyway. And yeah, although I didn't close it at the top up here, which in hindsight would have been a great thing to do. We've got that speed, we've got that SFP up here. This was at the point where I was in the capital and wasn't paying attention to the charts at all, so that's all good. But did close it this morning because I essentially want to go completely flat across the board on all trades. Okay, so locked in a near 7R here on virtual, and the other position was XMR. I think I took first stab at this breakout here. Again, a lot's been going on in my personal life, so may not be recalling events 100%, but I believe I took the breakout trade here. Oh no, actually, sorry. I took two stabs at XMR, okay? So the first stab I went through on the last stream where I got a bit cocky, and I think it was in this area here. Basically, I took a 30-minute close that was just on the line. Got punished for it, closed for a minus 0.4 R trade, and then again I took entry in this area here. I believe I was fairly well positioned and early into the trade here, and then closed down. I think it was just past break even at a minus 0.2 or somewhere thereabouts. Decided to take a third stab attempt at this breakout trade as price came back up and challenged the highs once again, because with this nasty picture here, this deviation sweep, whatever you want to call it, I did expect to see a very fast play out there, especially considering all the higher time frames from the daily to the weekly, extremely maxed out. But decided to take another stab, and then closed it out off the back of this diverging structure on the hourly here. So I posted this in the Discord and said this is probably going to run higher, but just closing out because A, I wasn't paying much attention to the markets. I was focusing on family issues. B, I was running many open trades at that point and wanted to start locking in profits as well. So hype 30R, virtual 7R, XMR 8R, so a cumulative 45R over the last few weeks. And like I said before, you know, trying to operate in the absence of greed. It's very good performance for me anyway. And you know, I need to be responsible in this area and do the right thing. Now, that's not to say that I'm now frozen out of the markets, okay? I want to make that point very clear. It's simply saying that I'm operating in a way that's just closing out trades and securing profits. I'm still looking at the strongest markets on the weekly time frame, right? I've been talking about that in great detail over the last few streams. And I'm still stalking them for solid setups, okay? So if strength shows itself and presents itself to me, I mean, even let's take XMR, what we're looking at here. Let's go down to the 30-minute. We're starting to form this horizontal level here. So maybe one more tap to validate the level, okay? Maybe there's some consolidation prior to the break and maybe a breakout trade like this. Assuming the RSI bar statistics here are in favor of that position, but what I am doing is just increasing my stringency somewhat because of the BTC picture, and obviously keeping a keen eye on both the weekly close tonight and then the monthly close to come as well. If we, even just take hype, right? So 30-minute hype picture, we can now officially remove these. you know, we are challenging this level here, and although maxed out on a lot of the higher time frames here, and even going down to the 6 and 8, we have a potential symmetrical triangle playing out on the lower time frames here. So again, you know, I say potential, right? I'm not saying this is going to play, but it's just a potential thought process here. So you've got 1 tap, 2 taps. I want to see a 3rd tap to really validate that level. If we can come down here and do something like this, then again, that's a valid technical setup based on 3 touch points at the highs, 3 touch points at the lows, ascending lows, right? So I always talk about ascending lows or descending lows in terms of the structure of these diagonal breakouts. If you don't know what I mean, a lot of people simply mark the upper levels, okay? Do so without enough touch points, right? So 2 is not enough, right? You need 3, 4 or more. And you want the lows to be climbing in the favor of your trade, or dropping in the favor of your trade if talking about bearish conditions and looking at short setups. What I don't want to be seeing is stuff like this, okay, where we have the opposite of that, okay? We want that market structure to be in favor of the trade and the position. But yeah, it's just to note that, you know, I'm still looking at these markets. I can enter new positions, right? I don't need to keep the old existing positions running. Very happy to lock in profits, do the mature thing, do the professional thing, compound account growth, and, you know, take a big bump up on my general account and move forward. In terms of my weekly position trades on TRX and XRP, I think I covered these 2-3 weeks ago perhaps. So TRX, XRP. I may look to close these off the back of the monthly BTC picture, okay? If we do put in a nasty SFP, basically the way that I'm like thinking about the markets at the moment is, you know, as cautious and responsible as possible, not letting my bias get in the way, not letting my emotions get in the way, you know, being as pragmatic and objective as possible. And I see that in a 2-stage process, right? So the first stage process is closing off all the trades that I've just run through with you. The second stage would be higher confirmation using the monthly as the primary thought process to close out the second layer of positions, which would span across the XRP and TRX position trades, and then potentially also the hype spot bag as well. So all that pending, of course, need to look at the monthly picture when that candle prints and make a decision as and when, basically. Robin, any short positioning? No short positioning. Watch the beginning of this stream again and you'll see why I talk about not positioning at points of potential higher time frame pivots. It's just a stance that I prefer to take. So anyway, that's me done for today. Do you guys have any questions? Is there anything I can help you with? Insane trade. Thank you, Morin. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think it's been massively helped by my, you know, the ongoings of my family and my child as well. It forced me to be very hands off in a moment where the trade really exploded, or the trades really exploded as well. So that's been a blessing on the trading front anyway. All right, guys, listen, take care, stay smart, stay cautious, stay independent in your thinking is the most important thing. Even though, you know, these are my ramblings and thought processes, it's incredibly important that you guys form your own opinions about the market. I say that, you know, listening to me, listening to anyone else on Twitter, you're only going to grow and progress in this game. You know, it's good to absorb and learn from others, but be as independent in your thought process as possible, whether that means going a bit cold turkey off Twitter, something that I'm always preaching and advocating. But yeah, stay independent, stay smart, and keep going. All right, so listen, speak to you guys soon. I'll be streaming again next weekend. Let's see when. So planning on doing it next Saturday, 10 a.m. All right, so I'll post a link probably Thursday, and catch you all then.